Okay, we are live.
We were kind of changing gears tonight instead of continuing to go through Christian's case. I had the last few weeks kind of, I think probably because of going through all the case file stuff, it's kind of hit me as far as kind of got down some and just was really, Christian was very heavy on my mind. And um, I thought about all the other mothers and family members who are in my same situation of kind of fighting for their child and justice or some type of justice. And I thought it might be good to kind of get some of us on together because I guess this was really more for me than anything to just kind of validate and to kind of have other people in my situation that could say, hey, I experienced that too. And I'm sure there's other people that might watch this that have similar situations. So I see, and Jana is on now. So we have Farah on and Jana, and Farah is kind of fighting the fight for her son, and then Jana is been, I was just saying, telling Susan, very active on all social media, trying to bring as much awareness to her sister's case or circumstances surrounding her death. And so I'll let each of you kind of give a brief overview of your situation because, I mean, everybody that's watching this knows my situation. So, Jana or Farah, one of y'all want to kind of introduce yourself and what's going on with your case?
Hi.
You can go ahead, go first.
No, no, go ahead.
Um, my name's Jana. My sister Crystal, she was 10 years older than me. I lost her February 9th, 2023. Her death was ruled a suicide in less than 2 hours. It was an hour and 40 minutes. We know that because in the 7 minute long interview that the lead detective did with her husband, he says, my name is Chief Detective Alan Irby. We are here due to the self-inflicted gunshot wound of your wife, Crystal McCrory Jones. Um, and so we knew right then that it was ruled self-inflicted. Of course, we had to do public records requests and things like that to get this information. Um, so in her case, there was no GSW done, no fingerprinting, no forensics, no ballistics, nothing was done to prove that it was suicide. Nothing to prove it was homicide either. We had um, her husband was a former employee of the investigating agency. So we're in Louisiana, so it's parishes here. So West Carroll Parish Sheriff's Office handled the investigation, and about a year prior to her death, he was employed by them as a patrol officer. He first he was a dispatcher, and then he became a patrol officer. And they went to send him to the police academy, and he couldn't make it past the second day, and that's when he quit. A year later, she passes away. We still think of it as a huge conflict of interest, so we begged the sheriff to allow the state police in. Thankfully, it's a one-party state, so all of this is recorded in legally recorded interviews with the sheriff, the district attorney. All of it's recorded. The sheriff never allows the state police to come in, so her case has never been looked at outside of our parish or their parish. I don't live in the parish, thank goodness. We have reached out to the state police ourselves. They declined to look at the case and to look at any wrongdoing on the part of the sheriff's department. The main piece of evidence that we had with the sheriff's department not doing a thorough investigation was that the spent casing, because it was a single gunshot wound, wasn't found by the investigators. It was found 7 days later by her husband. Um, and that was the main thing that we had. We're like, well, how did you not find that? And we used that to our advantage, and we went to the district attorney with it. We went to the attorney general's office with it. to Washington with Ray with it, and nobody really listened. Um, so now we're at the point with her time of death on her death certificate doesn't really match um, the time of death that it should have been, because really it was an unintended death. There should be no time of injury on there because it's not medically supported, and there was no one there to see it. No, there was no witnesses or anything. Going back on her autopsy report, her coroner's report, there were so many errors, from her date of birth being wrong, the spelling of her name, her death date. She had diseases listed that she didn't have, like atrial fibrillation, seizures. On the autopsy report itself, done by Dr. Frank Peretti, which, if you're familiar with the West Memphis 30, is the same pathologist that did my sister's case. He got like so many things wrong. Like, there was two different case numbers, hair color, eye color, wrong spelling of her name. He even got internal organs wrong, like saying that her female organs were present when they weren't. Then 10 months later, changed everything. Like, anything that I pointed out as a discrepancy, he changed it through email. Unfortunately, she was cremated against our wishes, so there's no hope for a second autopsy. That's an entirely different story of us not getting ashes. Um, and her case remains now, like, it remains open without a formal disposition, which is weird because it was deemed a suicide as a suicide on her death certificate, but her case remains open. So because it remains open, we're pushing for the coroner to change her death certificate to undetermined.
Well, and I know, like I said, you're very active as far as posting. You make me feel very bad as far as, like, because I don't post like you post, and you do a very good job of
I
keeping
try to post
this
because,
soul. Yeah.
yeah, that's why I do it. Because if I think about her, then I try to post, and I've actually made myself feel bad in the last couple of days, probably the last couple of weeks. I haven't posted as much as I normally do, or been in lives as much as I normally have, just because life happens, and it doesn't mean that they're not part of our lives, but um, we have to take care of the here and now, and it doesn't make us care about them any less. So don't ever think about it like in that sense.
Farah, kind of give us an overview or bring us up to date with your son's case.
Hi guys, I'm Farah, Adam's mom, and what can I say? Okaloosa County. Wow, it's very sad. This is like basically the tourist capital, and it is. There is so much going on here that people are not aware of, but that is so unsafe. They're in an unsafe environment based on what I've viewed, what I've learned. So they went to my son's house, called by the roommates. All of a sudden there was this worry about Adam. None of it makes any sense. And we're all of a sudden called in for a wellness check. And the next thing you know is the policeman opens the door with the butter knife. And before he even walks in, as he's opening the door, they're already discussing what this is. And they're calling it a self inflicted. You could see that it's on the body cam. And so within seconds of walking in, he calls in dispatch. It's labeled as self inflicted. And that's it. It's done. The case is over. And within 20 minutes of that, it's actually closed on paper. I just wasn't informed until the middle of March. I was told it was open the whole time, but according to the paperwork, it was closed 20 minutes later. And nothing was done. Nobody was talked to, nothing was done. And I was told to accept this label of self inflicted. But when I asked questions, nobody understood. I had to tell them after 38 days, after looking at a picture of my deceased son, that the firearm's in the wrong hand. Why am I telling them this 38 days later? Why am I telling the medical examiner this? Why am I telling the sheriff's office this? when they closed the case within seconds. And basically, if you think about it, they closed it within seconds once they called dispatch and they labeled it as such. And after that, they continued with that narrative without discussing it with anyone or speaking to anyone. And then on top of it, there were so many inconsistencies in the reports. It's outrageous. And, starting with the wrong hand, multiple projectiles, his belongings stolen before the police got there and from the crime scene as well. So I don't understand why um, they put an investigator who was an investigator less than 5 minutes, 5 months on uh, becoming an investigator, why they would put somebody like that, why they would not complete an investigation, why they would ignore leads, all of those things that don't make any sense. And clearly, if even a blind person could look at that crime scene and tell you that it was staged, but they don't want to listen to any of the evidence. Look at the evidence. All I keep saying, look at it. It's right there. It's right in front of you. Look at it.
Now, when did this happen? Well, I mean, like
Uh,
the date?
December 23rd, 2024. I believe my son was probably deceased 2 days at that point
Uh,
by the time those roommates called um, 911. But none of these stories make any sense. And I was told by the investigator at the meeting when I finally had with them in January, the day I looked at that picture, and he took, he's telling me an autopsy was done. I told him it wasn't done. He's arguing with me about it. I mean, the guy, he didn't know anything about this case. I don't know what his point was. He even got there after the case was officially closed. So I don't understand what these people's jobs were. Then they had this person that they call the Acorn Cop. Or if you heard anything about Okaloosa County, if you'll know about an Acorn incident where there was a young man that they handcuffed, put in the back of the vehicle, and checked him before they put him in the back of the vehicle. They patted him down, and then I believe, from what I remember, is 38 rounds or bullets, whatever, I don't know the exact wording, that they put into that police vehicle with that young man inside because somebody thought they heard a sound of a shot when an acorn fell on the car. That was the supervisor for my son's case. The same supervisor. Okay, so now I've had to file a civil case against the sheriff's office, the medical examiner's office, because I filed over 60, I'd say about 60 FOIA requests with no results. And so I filed a case in civil court, and basically the clerk gave me the wrong number, gave me a county case number instead of um, a circuit court case number. That sat in there for a month and a half until yesterday when the judge finally signed it and said it could move to the other court. But another fee needs to be paid for it to be moved to the other court. So basically, yeah, we messed up, and you a filing fee and all that stuff was paid. But you know what? Now because we messed up and we're gonna fix it, so you got to pay again. I don't understand the point of any of this. I don't understand why these things that are obvious, including all of these stories from the roommates that don't align. None of these things align. The facts, they don't align with the facts. The basically everything in there on that scene does not align with the self-inflicted, and definitely not with the wrong hand.
Jana, now when was the date for Crystal?
She was February 9th, 2023. And I also want to say that she also had a welfare check done on her, too. That doesn't make sense. And her husband was 12 minutes away. Um, Instead of going to check on her, he had a cop friend go check on her, and to discover that she was deceased.
I think I said something to you, Jana, back when we first met, and or maybe in something I referred to you as, oh, well, you're kind of a baby in the process because you were kind of newly into
That was
it,
in
you know.
Washington.
And
Yeah, when we were
unfortunately,
in
I'm a
Washington.
veteran in the process.
Yeah.
And so it's sad to me when I see, Farah, I can remember me and you. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that just, I don't know, that
Hurt.
fervor and the that you just can't believe how I think that we still in that first year think that
Yeah.
at the end of the day law enforcement is going to do what they're supposed to do, and
Or the justice system is
yeah,
going to
it's
do what
going
they're
to
supposed
help
to do.
you. And then you know um Jana, I see myself in you, a couple of years later in the process. And so I hope that y'all aren't 12 years later kind of in my position, and that y'all have some conclusion to it. Because I think that what really gets you down sometimes is when you feel like there isn't anything else you can do. When you hit that point where it's almost like everything has been exhausted and still there isn't justice. And so you feel like, um, that you failed and you've let them down and you haven't gotten done what you need to get done. And I've always kind of said there's been these lulls of where there was no activity, and then things would kind of swing back up, and then there would be this flurry of activity and things that you could kind of work on, and then it would go back into a lull. And I think that's when you get the most kind of the down, I guess, is when you feel like you're not doing anything, or you feel
Right.
like you're not, there's nothing that you can do. Um, so I think that I don't know if y'all experience that or not, but I know I have always kind of had that issue.
Yeah, mine is when I feel like nothing's happening, and then I'll get an email or I'll get a call, or um, someone will reach out, or um, I don't know. And sometimes it's not even a call or a reach out. Maybe it's a, I don't know, some silly, what I think is some silly TikTok, or Facebook, or some video is made. Maybe it's 12 seconds long, or something that somebody else does other than me. You know, that they talk about, or her name is mentioned, and I'm not the one mentioning her name,
Mhm.
and it just gives me a boost saying, okay, somebody else remembers her, and it's like, okay, she's not forgotten. Um, and I think doing this right here, and talking with other families within the same situation is, and carrying on, their names and just talking about them is doing so much, because it gives families hope that they're not by themselves, because you've been at it for 12 years, and I talk about you all the time, Ray. Like, out of Washington, I got nothing, but I got you. Like, I got meeting you. Like, to say, hey, I can go to work every single day. I can take care of my kids. I can go to softball games, but I can also fight for my sister. And so, like, that to me means the world. Like, I can do this. Like, and you guys, fair too. You lost kids, and I'm not knocking siblings. I'm not. I love my sister like more than anything, next to my girls and my husband. But you lost kids, and I cannot imagine losing a child. And that, like, y'all are heroes for sitting here fighting for them. So I mean, I look up to y'all.
Well, I mean, I think that, anybody, grief is grief.
Yeah.
When I see outpatients, and a lot of times my patients, especially when it first happened, they would come in and they would say, I don't even feel right talking to you about this because you lost your son, and I'm like,
Right.
no, it doesn't matter. Your grief is your grief. I mean, you know what I'm saying? You're just, you can't compare them. There's no comparison, one death to another, one family member to another family member. And I think that what kind of sets maybe our grief process apart from someone who loses a sibling or a child to, a car accident or death, or an illness, cancer, is that they have, not to minimize it at all. I think our problem is that we have to keep, because we have to keep fighting, we have to keep
Yeah.
retelling, we have to keep, seeing and talking about things that no parent or sister or brother should ever have to talk about. And then years down the road, when you've talked about it so much that you can talk about it just like you're talking about what you ate for lunch.
You're numb
And
to it.
sometimes I stop and think, it's terrible that I can sit here and talk about rigor mortis and lividity on Christian's legs and stomach contents and all the different things and say it calmly, don't get upset, whatever. And it's that you just keep, even doing this weekly. And sometimes, I'm not to it really, because you then go through you're rereading text messages, you're rereading things that you had kind of forgotten or pushed back. And it's just like, then it's just all, back again. the frustration and the getting angry over things that you had kind of forgotten about, that you were supposed to be angry about. And so anyway, I do think that is kind of a difference between the different ways of losing family members, and the grief process is that it's like never ending. Like to me, Christian just died. Like because I tell it, I say, we talk about this so much. And, I hope that 10 years down the road, y'all aren't still discussing crime scene photos and all the different things. And there can be some peace and there can be some closure for each of you and for all the other people out there.
I hope so too, but to be honest, in Crystal's case, I've come to the realization, not the conclusion, but the realization that there probably are no answers, because of the lack of evidence that was collected on either side. An undetermined, manner is probably going to be the best I can get. And of course, with our case being open, criminal charges could come forth or whatever, because you have to have some sort of reason why it's still open. But sometimes I think an I don't know answer is better than a lie. It's just simply saying to me, I don't know, is better than just throwing lies at me. And that's okay with me. And I've come to accept that I don't knows better than just blatantly not doing your job. But Karen on her name is advocating for other families not to have to go through that. Like there has to be a set procedures, protocols to make it to where that word is not used prematurely in these investigations over a scan or over the initial call. Like I think an hour and 40 minutes for y'all, what was it, 40 minutes for Christian? And now she's telling me 20 minutes for her baby. That's insane. That blows my mind.
Well, for one of the people at MBI, Mississippi Bureau of Investigations, he taught, this is about 2 years ago. He said, well, if it makes you feel any better, we use Christian's case in training of what not to do.
No, that doesn't make you feel any better.
In one way, I'm glad that, y'all recognize, because you're acknowledging that it was handled wrong and that you shouldn't just go in and go, oh, it's a suicide. But on the other hand, it made me angry because it's like, again, you acknowledge that there's an issue here and it's so bad that you've used it as training material without my permission.
Nobody's done anything about it.
And
where's the accountability?
Yeah. So, I'm glad that they recognize that there should be some type of a process before you just label something. But I think he thought that would make me feel better. I don't know that it really made me feel better. Because again, in a way, it's like, it's just once again, Christian being exploited. You're using probably his autopsy photos. You're using his whatever to, to show to all these people, and he's just a body to them or whatever. And but anyway, Farah, do you have like support? Do you have like family support, or are you kind of doing this by yourself? Or
I just focus on just keep going until I get an answer. I'm just not worried about what anybody else is doing or not doing. I put everything out there, for anybody to repost. If somebody wants to do it, fine. I'm not going to sit there and beg people to do anything. Somebody wants to offer their help or offer assistance, everybody's welcome to. But right now, I'm trying to fight this in court just to be able to get what I am due. And it's really sad that I have to go to court to fight to get my son's case file. I mean, what are they hiding?
And
I
you
don't
said his case
understand.
was closed, right?
Yeah, apparently it was closed in 20 minutes.
So
But
if his case is closed, that should be like that. You shouldn't have to fight for that. That's insane.
I've asked for things over and over and over again until it's like now it's 16 months. I'm tired of asking. I'm tired of putting in requests to everybody and asking over and over again. And now when I filed it in court, of course there was an issue. Why was there an issue? Why was I given a county court case number when it said circuit court in every single piece of paper that I gave the court? So why did you put it in a county court? My paperwork says circuit court. So now I'm finally got it transferred a month and a half later. That's a month and a half that got wasted for no reason at all. And double the fees. Like, what's really going on? Why is it so hard to tell me what happened to my son? Because as of today, not one person has explained to me how this physically happened. Because you know what? It can't be explained.
now, how old was Adam?
Adam was 33 years old, very successful. He was an industrial organizational psychologist. He
Oh,
moved up here. He worked for NASA before. He moved up here to be with me and was working at Toyota selling cars, Toyota Corporation.
hmm
And he just started working over there and he was doing great. And we were actually talking about lots of other things, but he was living his best life. I mean, every 7, 8, 10 days maximum, he was back, to his hairstylist, getting his hair done. He was, had his suits pressed, had his shirts pressed at the dry cleaners, had his meal prep and everything done. So he ate like healthy food. He worked out. He had 3 gym memberships. He was a runner. He had his own weights at home too. So he took exemplary care of himself. This is not somebody who didn't take care of himself. He cares about exterior experience, his interior. I mean, this is someone who loved life, who loved everything, who was always learning, who was always teaching. That's just the way I brought up, my son, and that's what he continued as. And that's, he was always great at teaching and always kind, always nice, always thoughtful. And he even made some of these fun videos with Toyota. He was living his best life. And it didn't make sense when they're telling me he did this to himself. And then when I asked him to explain it, and then when I find discrepancies, like it's in the wrong hand, like how did this even happen? I get no answers. And instead, I'm being told, well, it's a self inflicted and you just need to accept it. No, I can't, which is why I did a video today on a receipt. You get a receipt and you get a $5,000 bill, you're just going to pay it, or you're going to ask and say, well, what is this? Can you explain it to me? Because I got a receipt that says that my son died of a self-inflicted wound. Well, can you explain it to me? And I don't understand why nobody can explain it to me so far. No one has been able to explain it to me, or actually no one's made an effort. Instead, I got a one sentence from the investigator, case closed, you can pick up his things. What kind of thing is that? My son wasn't in jail.
With when they deny your FOIA or your public records request, do they? I mean, what is the reason? They say it's an investigative file. Do they say because they usually by law have to give you the statute that it's falling under?
How about they just don't answer?
Well, I mean, I would think that if they just don't respond, because there's a time limit that they have to respond. And I mean, I have filed, I don't know if it's 60, but I would say I've filed probably 40 or 50 public records requests in Mississippi. And that's one thing they always typically would do. They'll respond. Now, they may not give me what I want, but they'll respond. But I would think that you would have legal action there, because I mean that's federal law, I think.
Yeah, that's federal law.
It
Yeah.
is. It's
10
federal
days in
statute
Louisiana.
119.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that if they don't follow that statute, then you probably have some legal action there.
A lot of legal action there if they didn't follow that.
Well, that's why I filed a lawsuit, because I got tired of asking.
But is the lawsuit relate? You're filing a lawsuit because you're saying they didn't do their job, right?
I'm
Is that
filing a lawsuit because I want all my evidence, and I want them to explain to me how the hell this happened.
right? But what's the basis of the lawsuit? Like saying that they didn't do their, like, what's the claim?
The claim is I want my son's case file, and you need to explain to me the investigation, and then you need to provide me all the evidence of the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you did an investigation, show me.
Right. Okay.
And I want my file. So let's see if they can provide me all of the evidence, because right now, you know, things are missing. Things all of a sudden now don't exist that existed before. You can't decide to make things not exist, because if something existed, you have to show me what happened to it. It doesn't just disappear.
Can I say
Well-
something?
Oh yeah. Go ahead.
Just as like an outsider, and I know all three of your cases pretty well, and other cases similar, like Katie Major. There's one common denominator, and it's these suspects have connections, and so that's why it's all the red tape and the blocking and the it's lost or whatever, because it's all corruption. That's the one common denominator in all these kind of cases.
Oh, exactly. And I went to that Board of County Commissioners meeting, and this is the third time. And the second time they were like, well, we don't control this, and we don't. I was going to say, no, basically you are the bank for the county. All the money comes from you and is dispersed throughout the county. So don't tell me that the bank just gives out money and doesn't know what happens to it. Okay? You know, even as a parent, you give your child money, you want to know what happens to it as it disappears. You don't just say, here it is, and just be gone. That's like a receipt, the same thing. You don't just put something there and expect it to be agreed with. So none of those things make any sense. So I'm not going away, and they're not going to make me go away. And I'm going to stand there 100 times and ask the same questions if I need to ask the same questions just to be able to get my son's case file. Why am I not having his case file? Why am I going through this? Why am I having to pay $800 for body cam that you're redacting? So why are you redacting video of me in a meeting with you? You know, I don't understand why any of this is being done. I shouldn't even have to pay for any of that. And why are you redacting it? I don't want you redacting me.
Well, my experience is with the different agencies is that unfortunately they don't have to. I mean, we as parents or family feel like, and they should, but they really don't have to do a lot of explaining. I mean, right now I'm just fighting to just find out if they even still have the gun at the crime lab. And I don't understand why it's such a big deal for them just to tell me, yes, we have the gun, or no, we don't have the gun.
Did
I
you
mean,
put
it
in
would
a
be a
preservation request?
it would be a simple 30-second conversation or email, but they won't tell me that. They have denied. They say that it's part of an investigative file, that
But
they
his
won't.
case is closed, isn't it?
It is, and that's what I said. I said, well, there's several reasons why that really doesn't fly, and that's because, one, the Attorney General's office released his entire case file, and thousands of people have his case file all over the world. And so I don't really know why this piece of paper that's just a chain of custody, that's all I'm asking for, is the chain of custody for the gun. And the other thing is the case is closed. Third thing is, y'all all say it's a suicide. So why is there really an investigative file? I mean, what are you investigating?
Well, I
And
mean, technically, they have to come up with an investigation to prove that it's a suicide. Any death should be technically labeled a homicide unless proven otherwise. That's by the medical examiner's manual. It says every death should be considered a homicide until proven otherwise. Clearly, in my son's case, they didn't even think about anything else. They're like, okay, we're just going to put a label on this and that's it. But the same thing with you.
well, I mean, I understand, yeah, that's how it's supposed to be, but my point has always been that if they've been so adamant it was a suicide, then why there were things that they did that didn't even line up to that. I mean, like, why did you present a suicide to a grand jury? I mean, why would you present I mean, who are you trying to indict if you're presenting it as a suicide?
That makes no
But
sense.
yeah, so but my other thing was that, the chain of custody piece of paper is not an investigative report. It is a administrative piece of paper. And it's just basically their way of keeping up, with the flow of the evidence. So I have yet to hear back from them about, and I've requested that they have to tell me the statute that they're relying on to not give me the answer of whether or not they have the gun. I mean, again, it would be so easy for them just to say, yes, it's here, or no, it's not here. So I think sometimes it's almost like it's almost like they like tormenting the family, that power that they know that this is something that could ease our mind or give us a little bit of comfort, and it's like they can't even give us that. They can't even just say, okay, look, let's have a little compassion. Let's tell this lady, what she wants to know. And Jan, I know that you've kind of had the same thing with FOIA and public record requests. I guess we all do with fighting that fight.
Yeah, I was able to get off Crystal's case file because her case was deemed closed, of course. Hang on one second. Sorry, my child. So her case was closed. I was able to get everything. And then when someone did a FOIA request they really didn't like, then they said her case was open without a formal disposition. So they reopened it to try to get it to where they didn't have to release any more records. But the funny thing is, with Crystal's case, is that they actually gave the gun back to her husband when the case is supposedly still open. He went and sold it, and someone took pictures of him selling it. I went and compared the serial numbers, and I bought it. So I actually own the gun. If there's any kind of testing that can be done on it. So why did you give the gun back if it's still an open case? It's the only evidence you collected. So that's what bothers me is you have no evidence left whatsoever. The pillow that that she was shot through is was not collected. Nothing was collected, like no evidence whatsoever other than that gun, and you don't have it anymore. So how can you have an open investigation?
Where is the shell casing?
We have no idea.
Oh, they don't have it either?
No, we can't get an answer. We cannot get an answer. We've actually found out from the now ex-girlfriend, because he's remarried now, not to the girl that he dated after Crystal for like a year and a half. That he didn't actually find the shell casing. It was a friend girl of his. Like, I guess they weren't dating, but he brought her to view my sister's body, and she was cleaning up for him, and she found the shell casing, not him. So I don't know if they were ever in possession of the actual shell casing.
Okay.
It blows my mind. Like, I don't understand it at all. And nothing else was ever collected. So,
Didn't he claim to take it to the police station though?
and the report, I believe they claimed that they came and got it, but in the case file that they sent over to us, that the West Carrollton Sheriff's Office sent over to us, it's labeled screenshot where they found it at. So
Okay.
they forgot to change the name of it, like, but it just says screenshot. So it's like somebody
Yeah.
screenshotted it from a phone.
I think I remember you telling me that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Susan, are you able to move this little welcome thing? Because now that somebody's commented, this hand is tapping on the top of your head. That's all I see.
All right, hold on, I'll move it.
Where are you doing the live? Where is it being shown?
That's a Susan question. I know Justice for Christian, if it gets there sooner or later.
I mean,
Yeah,
on Facebook, is
it's
that
in
what I
Justice.
have to-
It's in Justice for Christian right now. It's in my group right now. It's on my Sleuth Syndicate page, and then I put it in a
Oh,
couple
that's
other
your
Sleuth
page.
Syndicate,
Okay, got it now.
in a couple other Sleuth Syndicate groups,
Oh, okay.
just so it's shared out there more.
I don't know why I thought you were a male when I first saw the name of the group, Sleuth Syndicate. I don't know why. And then I saw your name, and I think you sent me your phone number, and I saw your name, and I'm like, oh, I thought it was a man. I was wrong.
Okay, yeah. Okay, you're okay. Yeah, do your picture down, Susan, like you had it. Do no? Okay.
Yeah, hold on. I'm trying to get rid of that.
Okay, there we go. Now that's better. If Jordan had not commented, it wouldn't have bothered me. But then she commented and said the welcome hand tapping Susan's head, and so that's all I could see was the hand hitting your head. So, well, I think that I know there's a lot of different lives, and I know Jana, you're involved in a lot of different discussion groups and different things, and there's so many cases out there. It's really, again, sad that there has to be so many cases out there. And when something first happens, you think that it's only happening to you, and because I was never exposed to true, I never watched true crime. I never really was involved in social media stuff, and so it was very discouraging to see how many families are in the same situation we're in, and still fighting and still trying to get some kind of conclusion to their particular situation. And I know, Jana, like you said, you've kind of become more of an advocate than even, Crystal's case, yes, but you've kind of made it more about just helping getting laws done, because you're working on trying to get what law passed? And
so Crystal's law just asked for conflict-free investigation. So any kind of conflict of interest that it might appear, we ask that a second set of eyes looks at cases. A conflict of interest could be like former employment or relationships or anything like that. We did have it wasn't a law, but we had a House concurrent resolution 60 in Louisiana passed, and it had to do with the mailing of cremated human remains. The United States Postal Service does a fantastic job. If you have a loved one cremated and they have to be mailed across state lines, they require you to put certain labels on the boxes and use a certain box and use certain packaging because that's someone's loved one. And so my sister's husband wouldn't allow us to have any of her remains, but he shipped a very small portion to her oldest son in New York across 7 state lines. But he used an old beat up Amazon box and he left loose ashes in this old urn, no identifying information and no labeling of the box. And my nephew had to dig it out of the snow. And so even though they have these rules and procedures that you follow, there's no consequences if you don't. And so the United States Postal Service and the U.S. Senate, I mean, not the U.S. Senate, but the Louisiana Senate and the Louisiana House of Representatives agreed you have to have consequences if you're going to have rules and procedures. So they passed House Concurrent Resolution number 1660, urging Congress to make it a law that, if you don't follow these procedures, that you're going to face a penalty or a fine or jail time. And so hopefully when Congress comes back into session, then they'll look at it and it'll pass unanimously like it did in Louisiana in June of last year. And that was more for my nephew than it was anything. And that's the only thing I've shared with him directly about his mom's case. Because a week before my sister's death, she found out that she's going to be a grandma for the first time. And that little boy will be 4 in September. So I let him be a dad, and then I fight for his mom. And it was him telling me that, hey, Jan, I support you if you need me for anything. If he wouldn't have said that, I would be advocating for, mental health or advocating a little more silently for my sister because at the end of the day, it's about her kids and what her kids want. And with his support, I do what I do. But I quickly realized it's not just about Crystal because there's so many cases just like Crystal's in every single town, in every single state. Um, and I pick on the South because the South is, I guess, it's so deep with it. Like I've seen some cases, like even in Alaska, there's one in Alaska that I'm familiar with, but the South is just so riddled with the good old boy system that is not even funny, and something has to change. And the best way to change it, that my ridiculously expensive attorneys that didn't do anything said, is to be loud. That's the only good advice they gave me before they did do anything, was to be loud, and it's got me further than anything.
Yeah, he was Chief Dubose at the time. He was really kind of the person, not to say that we wouldn't have gone down that path eventually, but in one of the last meetings, he kind of brought some of this on himself because I can remember sitting there, we're all around the conference table, and, he's telling us all the reasons why the case will never be, reopened and why it will never go anywhere. And he's pretty much blaming it on the DA, saying Bilbo isn't going to ever reopen this case. He's never going to let it go anywhere. And, and his advice was, I'd just go get some media. And, well, they probably got a little bit more media than they ever wanted. But, I think they underestimate the determination sometimes. And they throw that out there, not thinking that, people will really be able to go and maybe get the media that will put pressure on them and kind of shine a light on their own department or their own shortcomings. But, I just think that each of us, I'm sure that Farrah, you probably have, if you could pick some law, there would be some law that you would want. We have Christian's law, and I'm very proud of Christian's law. And what, it took a long time because I was not familiar with the process. And quite frankly, kind of what you're saying, Jana, the good old boy system. If you don't have an in when you're trying to get a law like passed like that, I finally just paid a lobbyist, or it would have never got done. because the first year I tried doing it by myself, thinking, who's going to vote against this? That you can't release autopsy photos. That's just a slam dunk, easy law to get passed. And nobody would, they would always they'd refer me to somewhere else. Well, have you talked to the Attorney General's office? Well, the Attorney General's office is the people who release the autopsy photo. So I doubt they're going to help me. And it would be just, well, if the Attorney General's office doesn't want to help you, then you probably don't need to do this. And so when we finally got it passed, and it was unanimous, both in the House and the Senate. But now, I feel like, and that's not just for whether it's a suicide or anything like that, just crime in general, I feel like there needs to be a lot of change to how a grand jury is conducted. And I don't know if grand juries are conducted differently from state to state. I would think that they're all kind of similar. But I know here in Mississippi, where they can go in there and say anything they want to say, this would have all not happened with Christian's case if we could have had a representative and known from the start how they presented the case. But it took, years to find out the extent of how they misrepresented the case to the grand jury and why nobody got indicted. So if I could pick another law, it would be to do some type of process of where the family or whoever could have a representative. I know the family member doesn't need to be in there, but some type of representative that could report back to the family and hold the district attorney accountable for presenting accurate information. And it will never happen, I'm sure, but I think that's, any crime. I wouldn't want my child to be accused of murder or be accused of stealing a car or whatever and go in there, because pretty much if they want to indict you, they can indict you, whether you're innocent and they know you're innocent, and vice versa. You can be a thief or a murderer or whatever, and if they don't want you indicted, then you don't get indicted. And so it's really, I never knew how much power the district attorney had until Christian's case.
I can probably name like 20 cases that are all the same, in different locations. And like I said, it's all down to corruption. And it's almost like you guys are a part of a club and not all of you know each other. Mm-hmm. But I often wonder if all those people, you guys and other people in your boat, got together because, like you said about the grand jury, it was made for one way of doing it, but if you have a corrupt DA, mm-hmm. It's worthless, and they use it as a scapegoat.
Right. To me, the district attorney's office would be the most, probably one of the most important positions that you need to have a very ethical person in. And I would venture to say that the vast majority are not in the position for the right reasons. It doesn't pay
I'm
well.
going to agree with that one. Definitely.
Huh?
I'm definitely going to agree with that one.
Because the only reason why you would want that job is for power. Because it doesn't pay, anything hardly, when compared to what you can make as an attorney. Even if you're not a good attorney, you can still make probably twice, working minimally, than what you would make as a DA. And we've tried to get people to run against Cassie, and nobody wants the job. Nobody wants the headache of the job. They're going to give up pay if they're already a practicing attorney. And so the only person, in my opinion, that wants it is either one, you have political aspirations, and this is a stepping stone, and this is just to, gain some notoriety. Two, you're corrupt and you want the power and you're going to take some kickbacks and things like that to pad your salary. Or three, you're lazy and you can work as little or as much as you want. So I don't know what category some of our
Bilbo?
DAs would fall under, but and that's my personal opinion. But I mean, it's just not very many people out there that has and I'm not saying I'd be any better as far as the moral compass to have that job and stay true to the what you need to do to be an ethical DA. So
I think something needs to be done at a federal level, because this does happen so often in so many different places, and the families just get shut down. I mean, all three of you have been told you have to accept it's suicide.
Without an explanation.
Exactly.
It's like, it's like, that's why I use an example of the receipt. You get a receipt, you go somewhere, you go to the grocery store. They're like, oh, you have $500 you need to pay us. Aren't you going to want to know what the $500 is for? If you're going to tell me something as big as my son is gone, you're going to hand me a piece of paper that says, this is your verdict, this word. You need to explain to me how you got to that conclusion. And if you can't explain to me how you got to that conclusion, well, that's not your conclusion. Because both of those can't be true at the same time.
Well, they've given me a lot of explanations. They weren't very good explanations, and some of them didn't make sense. So sometimes getting an explanation really still isn't really helpful. Because again, they can kind of say whatever they want to say, and you just have to accept it or not accept it and keep fighting against it. The one thing this has all taught me is patience. It really is patience, because I was never really a very patient person, and I've learned lawyer time, which means, when they say, oh, it won't take long, in lawyer time, that means a couple of years. When you tell me something ain't going to take long, I think you're talking about in 2-3 weeks or a month. But I used to tell Cynthia, our attorney, she'd say something about, oh, Ray, this won't take that long. And I would say, well, in lawyer time, like, what is that going to translate to my time? Because my version of not very long is different from your version of not very long. But, I think we waited over a year for like a year and a half for an opinion from the Mississippi, Supreme Court. And you just learn to wait. You become very good at waiting. I was reading a comment on that somebody had posted. So I think we got kind of off topic of the whole thing was supposed to be, I guess, on how we handle our grief and all. But I think that it was a good discussion of kind of the frustrations that, like Susan said, we all have very common themes throughout. And I really wish, Susan, we could have some kind of almost national,
Well, if you want, I can get a hold of as many of them as I know, because there's at least 20 cases that I know of.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's always power in numbers. I think with that, it would have to almost be something federally, because we'd all be from different states. So it'd be something that we'd be coming up with a common goal for federal. I will say that when we went to Washington, Jana mentioned it for that Stomp the Hill that they have like once a year, and it's like a week where you don't have to have an appointment. Really, you can just go to Washington, D.C. and just go. And and it was very interesting. seeing the actual buildings and offices of these people that you see on TV and giving interviews. But it was just so, just like BS, really. They were very nice and they said all the right things. And yes, we would love to help you. Here's my card. Get back in touch with me when, next week when you get back home. And what that really translated to, when I get you out of my office, when I get you out of my office and the door's closed, I don't have to really deal with you anymore. So,
Exactly.
because, I contacted, this is my state people. It wasn't like I was contacting somebody in Texas that, they're saying you're not my constituent. We met with people that were, representing Mississippi, and very nice, but never responded to an email. Never, didn't even respond. It wasn't that they said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't help you." They just never responded. But you would have never known that if you'd been sitting in that office with them. And they were, again, just a bunch of PR, really. It's what most of it is PR. We're going to let these poor people come up here for this week, and we're going to listen to them and smile and tell them what they want to hear. And I would love to know how many people got something done that week. I would hazard to say very few. It's a good PR. It's a good PR thing for them, and that's about it. Well, Susan, I guess get a roll call going, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, I will.
A whole bunch of us. We need to go over there to Washington and go let them know what's going on. That people aren't doing their jobs here, and families are suffering, and public safety. There are people that have committed crimes and taken people's lives, and they're walking around free, and they have the ability to harm others and take their lives away too. Why are we letting that happen?
Yeah.
Well, Susan, if you're saying, because you do kind of monitor or you're involved in multiple cases, I guess, and you're saying that like kind of local corruption or whatever is the kind of the common thread.
Almost every single case.
Yeah, totally.
My first question, my first question to her was, who does the roommates know? Because this only happens when, like I said, 20, 30 cases, if not more, where I've talked to people, and it's always been somebody, the suspect knew somebody. Always.
I agree with you.
And I think
I came across something today that shocked me and that made me think exactly on the path that you're talking about, but I'm not going to divulge anything because it's just something I came across. I haven't doubled and tripled and quadruple checked it yet, because that's how I know it makes more sense. But it just makes me wonder, why would they do this? Why would they pretend nothing is going on? Why would this happen? Two reasons. One is mainly exactly what you said. Who knows who? So there has to be some link. And then the other one is tourism. Is the money that's coming in, is that so big that is the reason that we need to kind of divert attention and not call these things what they are, which are homicides, which need investigating, which need time, which need funding. And then it also changes the crime statistics. But since it is an area where it's a very touristy area, people come spend $10,000-$20,000 just on a weekend over here. So it's a high traffic, not a high traffic area. It's an area where people spend a lot of money to go on a short little vacation. And do we want to keep our crime statistics low? I don't know exactly which one of those answers it is, but I know that those two are likely where some of those answers might be. Who knows who's attached to who's friends with who, that kind of linkage. And
also it's when, like, if a cop makes a mistake on investigation and like a legit mistake, but they won't want to admit it.
Well, that's what I first thought, and that's what it seemed like. But how can you guys decide, because it's on the body cam, before you even enter the room, as you're unlocking it, as you're opening it, you're deciding what it is. Everybody can hear you on the body cam.
Yeah.
How are you deciding what this is? And you never even approached his body when you called it in.
Ray, I don't know why it's showing up.
Yeah, triples everything. I think.
Yeah,
triple. Yeah, that's okay.
It's like posting it under the Sleuth Syndicate one too. I don't know.
Oh, and then bind. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, like I guess maybe because it's on both those YouTubes. Yeah. Sorry.
I think that I think federally, if there was some type of oversight, which I know they'll say, well, that's already in place. It's the FBI, but you go. I mean,
it's not.
FBI has never even let us in the front door, and we've tried.
I think if it's whittled down to specific types of cases, because it's these suicides staged as, I mean, murder staged as suicide. In all of those cases, it's they know somebody, or they know somebody, and then everybody above can't admit mistakes and covering it up, and then just goes.
I was talking to somebody today, and she asked me why did I think that this was still going on, and why that they wouldn't do the right thing, and someone come forward and open the case and whatever. And I said, well, because they can't. And she said, well, why not? I said, because if they did, it's going to show all the people that were corrupt, all the people that covered it up, the coordination between the different agencies. And
it opens up all the other cases.
Right. And I said, they dug themselves a hole the first week of this case, and they dug it deeper and deeper and deeper every step of the way, because this person then backed up this person's story. And when I say person, I'm not talking about, one of the kids. I'm talking about a law enforcement or a politician or whoever. And, this person then did covered for this person. And I said, now it's like a domino effect. If it would be, Bilbo, Cassie, multiple law enforcement people. It would be, Attorney General's office, MBI. I still say that one day I'm going to find that attorney that just has nothing else to do but time, and is going to take on this conspiracy case that I know that I have against all the different agencies. And I don't have to worry about a statute of limitations, because it hadn't even started, because they continue to cover up, and will take on those three agencies, really four. But it's like an attorney told me, Ray, they've got all the resources in the world and attorneys that they can throw at this. And one attorney couldn't keep up with the paperwork that they would, bury you in, as far as just filings and briefs and everything. And there would just be no way to make it, worth someone's while to take the case on. But that is my dream situation. Is one day some attorney that's about to retire sees this and says, let me do this one last hurrah and take on the system. And because basically what needs to be done is somebody needs to take on the system and take it all down and start all over, because it's definitely needs to happen. Well, I appreciate you, Farah, getting on here tonight. And I think that Jana had to take a phone call, so she had to get off. And Susan, of course, always taking your time to mediate, moderate, whatever the word is. And we'll have to do this again down the road. And Farah, you can give us an update on if you've gotten any further in a couple of months with any of your FOIA requests or your civil suit or anything, and kind of keep us posted.
Well, I'm excited. Maybe I can start working on that bill to get it passed for Adam too. So I'm going to work on that. Since you know about bills, maybe you can help me figure out how to get the bill passed.
Well, I wasn't very successful. I mean, we did get it passed, but like I said, the first year I did it on my own and I got nowhere. And the second year, it was like, okay, I'm gonna have to pay somebody, and so I paid a lobbyist, and I didn't really do anything other than pay him. He did everything, and again, it's about relationships. It wasn't anything to do with the content of Christian's law. It was just relationships. And
Politics.
yeah, I mean, I can remember him calling me like the last day of the session or something like that. It was like if it didn't pass that day, it was done, for the year.
Mhm.
And he called and said, well, they're arguing over who gets to have their name first on the bill. And they were to scrap the whole bill because they were arguing about whether it was going to be the House or Senate that said that they like sponsored it or something. I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous now, But anyway, they worked it out and it passed. So that was the most important thing. But y'all have a good rest of your week and weekend. And like I said, Farah, we'll keep in touch and have you back on in a couple of months or so, or in a few weeks. We don't have a big audience, but you're welcome on here anytime. People probably get sick of hearing me talk anyway. So I always enjoy having other people. And if Susan, anything happens to Susan, this whole thing will go down the drain because I can't do any of this without Susan. So anyway, okay, y'all have a good week, and I'll see you, Susan, next week.
All right. Bye.